Okay, welcome to the call to Sam Talks. Like I mentioned a minute ago, we're going to talk about checklists today. We're going to talk about both ends of checklists, being how we configured them, and then we'll show them actually in action, is like using the checklist and the things that are available for our team. So we'll start with a checklist configuration, which we found under settings. Only full administrators or SAM leads can access this. I want to say access this page, but certainly accessing checklist configuration. Checklist configurations are under checklist in your tools area. And then you'll choose your main entity. And in this situation, we're going to pop into a foster family. So once I get here, I believe what it says, if there's no checklist available, is that there's nothing set up here. But we've got a couple of things in this section to begin with. So we'll just sort of set you up with the screen. So if there are checklist sections, you can actually filter by them to really narrow down on a specific checklist section at a time. I do recognize that if I make a change, it's going to open up the whole screen, I believe, again, for after every change. So you may have to just constantly click that filter, but narrowing down so you're looking at one section at a time is really helpful, especially once you get 10 and 20 different sections of a checklist built. And then to open all of them back up, you just select checklist section. These boxes designate a checklist section. And you've got a title at the top and then how this section is triggered on a client record. So how this section automatically opens. For the most part, your checklist section should have automation to them. And the automation can be edited here. So I'll talk first really about adding an item, and then we'll go back and talk about all of the checklist section edits that you can make as well. And then down here, you'll see checklist items that already exist on this checklist section. And you've got various variables for who's responsible, any response time, whether it's shown for your clients being shown to end users. If you've got an upload field connected, which really we can see a little bit more here, is we've got a specific request to your end user to upload a specific document there, or download a document here, or you could also connect them to a form for them to do data entry directly into SAM. And then before I leave this screen, the little meatball menu allows you to go in and edit or delete that checklist item specifically. So first off, and then on our sidebar here, we have adding a checklist item, which is going to be the next thing that I talk about. We can also edit the order. When you edit the order, it does allow some additional functions to open up on the screen. So you do get an order where I could change inquiry attachment to number 1 versus number 2, just a simple ordering. I can reorder these sections from here, right? And then certainly I can still get to edit, which again, I'll talk about a little bit later, or I could delete that entire checklist section. And then this little accordion allows us to open and close, even when we're in the configuration screen, to kind of, again, get stuff out of our way so we can focus on what specifically we're doing. This public checklist form is actually something new to the new interface. This is going to take us to the public form that has this checklist section available on it. And you can see on this public form the connection back to the checklist, which will take us backwards. So before I leave here, I notice this form is disabled. So I'm going to pop in and enable the form and then jump back into the checklist. So that should allow us to open that as the family and allow the family to actually access this section. And then is there anything under here? Really under advanced options, the only thing here is any modifications, and it really takes you to a modification report. Your teams will not see developer options. So let's add an item. So I am going to add an item for a consultation call. And I'm putting this on the foster family case table. And knowing your tables and really narrowing down to really the specific type of record you're managing at this point is super important. So this first one is going to be at the case, which your case table is available on most of your records. Let's see. So adoptive families, children, birth parents, foster parents all have cases. The therapy has a case. And then if you have new entity types, like in this system, we have a genetic family. When you set that up with our team, we can build a case. Your teams cannot build cases. So it has to be something, if we were building a new entity, that's a main question that we're going to ask you is, do you need a case? And that case table is sort of an umbrella of all the full service that you offer for that type of record, right? And it's, you have a different case from adoptive families or foster families from the children you serve, because the way you service those individual records is different. You're not going to handle a child the same way that you'll handle a foster parent. But of course, then later on in the process, they can be connected through like a placement record in that example. So if we're here and we're adding a checklist item, again, I'm going to do this one first on the case because it's a more simple way of building this. There's a lot of prompts that Sam is asking you for on this screen. You absolutely have to do the first two, and the rest of them are really all optional. So the first one is telling Sam what section you're going to put this on. And so we've got two choices of whether we're choosing an existing section or we're going to create a new section. In this case, I'm going to choose an existing section, and Sam is going to offer me this checklist sections that already exist. This is going to be, again, pretty simple just to keep, before we build on the complexity, I'm going to stick it in the inquiry section. Maybe I'll even put it in the application section. Is we're going to say this consultation is only done once a family's actually applied. Our next step is to select an existing field or create a new field. So one of the, I want to phrase it, a good practice is to look at the fields that are available for specific tables. When you're working on case checklists, you're very unlikely to have things on the foster family table or the main entity table. Generally, the main entity table is going to be people's names, maybe people's date of birth, maybe where they live, things that aren't gonna, they might change, but they're not a way that you're servicing that record. It's not an action that you're taking. It's not part of your process. It's just information about that record type. But you get you get several tables here. You do not get the full list of tables because it can be a little overwhelming to look at, I think is really the intent behind not having them all set by default to be here, is you're looking through a lot of stuff, and generally there's specific record types that you are going to build checklists on. So in this case, or this example, I'm going to choose foster family case, and then we get a new drop down. Now it knows what fields might be available from the foster family case table. Checklists are dates. They are always going to be dates. It is, yes, this is done on what day. So we are going to choose here, actually, so best practice is really to look through and see, do you see this field that you're looking for already? And in this situation, we don't, because we're going to call it consultation call. So it doesn't exist. So at this point, I'm going to create a new field. Now, Sam will default you to the case table. However, this will not always be the table that you choose. This example, this first example is, we are going to remain on the case, but my next example, we're going to jump into the placements table, and Sam is still going to default to the case because that's the highest, the highest table in the hierarchy after the main entity, right? So you would have, let me actually grab a screen that represents this hierarchy. Is done under tables and fields. And if I look at our foster family, we have our foster family as our main table, and then we have case. And then we've got all of these additional tables that are displayed here so that we can narrow in real specifically around what type of process and what type of record and what type of process are we building within that record. Because a lot of the information you guys capture really is a process, because you'll ask for information, you receive information, you may need to approve that information, you may need to send that information off. So the process is going to vary depending on what you guys are specifically requesting, but the case is always going to be directly underneath the main entity, and then generally all the other types of records fall in line under that. So like, as an example, if I look at the child has a case, and then there's information down below it. Are we reviewing the case? Are we asking for goals about that case? Are we asking for a placement assessment? On and on. Okay. So when I am here, this is on the case. And so we are back on creating a new field. We're going to call this consultation call. And we just start moving down for the different prompts. So we can set a response time. Perhaps we do set a response time in our order of things. In this particular checklist section, we are asking the family to do a consultation call with us after they apply. So maybe we say within 5 days of the foster family case application date, we want to basically we're creating a due date for the consultation call so that we know to try and schedule that out with the family. And that's our preferred time period. You do have the option of setting it in business days. So if this happens on a Friday, you're really looking to like the next Thursday or Friday when you want this done versus Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever, however that calculates out 5 days. So we set that, and then we can choose the responsible employee. So this is really only needed when the checklist item or the task that you're setting up is for your team. If it's a family, something that the family needs to do, like the family needs to upload a document to you, you can leave this as none. But maybe in this situation, a consultation call is we have a specific employee, and I think my name is Samantha in here. I don't know what my name is in here anymore. Yeah, it is Samantha, but I don't see my name in here. So I'll say Stephanie Tess is the person that's responsible. You can also choose set by a role. And you could say, oh, it's always the case worker that's responsible to complete this consultation call. And that's really the person that's going to mark this as complete once we get to using the checklist. Our last option in this screen is to show it in my task on the home page, which is this section right here. So 5 days from now, Stephanie Test logs in and they'll see that a consultation call is due for a specific family. Okay, and that's what you can set up by selecting this option right here. Some of your checklist items will be documents. In this case, we don't have a document. It's we're asking for a consultation call. We could, though, set up a field where maybe your team creates, takes notes about this consultation call. And we want the team to upload those notes here. If that were the case, we can create a document upload field, especially when you're building a new checklist item. You will really often click this if you're asking somebody to upload a document to you. Sam is going to go ahead and put in the exact same field title, consultation call, and it's really just a pending document upload. So when you're building new fields in SAM, on the same table, you cannot have the same field title, right? Because it doesn't know what it is. So if you ever do that, SAM is going to append parentheses and then the number of times that this field title matches another field title that already exists. So Sam is just adding in a document upload. I really like this. It makes it easy to see these types of fields in the tables and fields screen later. So that's nice. And then we can create a new doc type because it doesn't exist. But again, anytime you have a drop-down list, it's kind of nice to see what's available in here. I don't see anything. I'm assuming this is alphabetical because it appears that way in this list right now. This list is set up alphabetically, but that may not always be the case. So kind of toggling through the whole list is really a best practice. But here I'm going to call it, and I'm going to change it and say that it's the consultation call notes, because that's when this document gets uploaded into the checklist, it's going to also go into the document section. Okay. And when it's in the document section, it's going to be called consultation call notes. So instead of just consultation call. So we'll be able to tell really clearly what that is. Then there are client public checklist settings. So if you are sharing this with your clients or not, because not every checklist item is going to be shared with your clients. In this case, I'm going to open this up so you can see these options, but really and truly, this is an internal one. So I'm going to uncheck it as well. But whether we show it to clients, let's say we were giving a policy, right? This is some sort of a policy document that the family needs to also upload. We're choosing the information up here is what they're uploading, but right here, we can actually provide a document to download, which is that template policy that they can pull down on their computer, read, sign, and then upload to you. Okay. They also have the ability, or you also have the ability to choose a form to use rather than just a document. And this is also an and or an or statement. Like, yeah, it's an and statement also, because you can include a document for download. Like, let's say there's an application form, and you can also connect it to a form to use, which would be the application form as an example. And the reason you might choose that option is because sometimes families have a difficult time dealing with computers and technology, right? And so they don't like doing the data entry, or they have bad internet service, or various different reasons why they don't want to go into the form to use, and they can do a download. I would say most of the time it's either or, but you do have the option to choose both. And then you can also provide instructions to your client to help aid them in completing this document. So all of your documents that are shared might tell the family really specifically under that checklist item, you must sign, date, and then upload this to us. But sometimes tasks really require that the family do something else, like getting fingerprinted. And you might be giving them instructions right here on where to go in your local area, or you cannot add a link here, I don't think. So yeah, mailing address, who to call, just other general information that will help the family complete this the way you want them to complete it can be done there. And for this item, I'm not going to show it to clients because it's really an internal thing that we're doing. There is a checklist memo. This is for you. This is why, what's the purpose of this? And we can say things like in 2025, we are introducing a consultation call to narrow families into specific programs, whatever, right? Whatever information that will help you remember. And when I say you in this context, I really mean your team. Because what I've seen over the years is SAM leads can come and go, right? Like life happens and we transition into different positions or work with different agencies. And it is an accurate statement that the way that some SAM leads set up the system, the next people that come along don't have any idea what's going on. So eventually I'll probably set this to be a required field so that you are explaining to folks that come beyond you what is necessary and why you set this up and to begin with. So I would say this is a best practice to add this information. And then there is criteria. So this is basically your conditions. Why would this consultation call show up or not show up? Criteria can be added to the checklist, every checklist item individually, like where we are right now. And it can also be added to an entire section, checklist section. So you can decide you do not need to have criteria added on every checklist item and the exact same criteria on the checklist section. You can choose one or the other. Any criteria added to this section is going to apply to every checklist item within that section. So only when you have a section that is shared amongst different programs, I'm going to provide this policy document for program A and then a different policy document for program B. That's where you're going to add a condition or a criteria in this section here. And then when you're here, you can add items like where am I getting too many fields here? Looking at the foster family case, where I'm setting program equals foster care versus foster to adopt or something else, right? So any other of our programs types, we can really, again, give one offering to one program type and one offering to another program type. So when you set up conditions like this, the only other thing that I can think of to tell you now is this data point needs to be entered before this checklist section is triggered on a record, because if it requires this information, if this section, or sorry, if this checklist item requires the knowledge that the program equals foster care and the checklist section is triggered before we've entered that, SAM really doesn't have that information. So when you're thinking about building your process, you really want to take into consideration these conditions that you put in, that they are entered before you get to this point in your process. And for this, I'm gonna let that go and then press save. So again, trying to keep this pretty simple. I'm going to filter again, just so we're constantly seeing that. And here is the consultation call item that we set up. And we've got the caseworkers responsible. We've got the different time. This one is not shown to clients. And we've got this upload function here. We're not providing any information, any document to download, nor a form. And there are no conditions over here on the section or on that checklist item, right? So there aren't, let me see here. I'm trying to see if in this, here we go. So in state background checks, this section does have a condition, and conditions are entered directly beneath how this section is triggered. And that's where you'll find it. So as an example, again, this background checks checklist will only open when the background check record is set as in-state. If it were set as an out-of-state background check, this section would not open at all for the record. And so now that I've added a checklist item, I really want to show it happening. So I've got a foster family, or I'm going to build a foster family checklist test. And I'm going to just set the program as foster care in case I have a cover page redirect set up on here. And then, oh gosh, I think we might have an issue, but I'm going to try this. Is the foster family inquiry date. I think it's this field. Let me just double check really quick here. Okay, so I'm going to enter this field. And now what we should see is under the checklist. This is where checklists are found. They're under SAM links. We have the two sections that are opened based on our configuration. We opened both of them. So let's go build onto our checklist configuration. What am I gonna do? Oh, okay. So now I'm gonna add a checklist item. Let me just look through here real quick. Based on a multi-record table. So a multi-record table is a type of record that allows you to track a history or many records where all of those individual records have the same type of information you're trying to collect. A lot of the tables in SAM are multi-record tables. Examples of this, communications. So speaking down on communications, every communication record has a date when it was completed. It has a subject line. It has a body field. It has who wrote this. It might tell you whether it's an imported email or not. It might tell you who did you do this with. Some folks have document upload fields on the communication so they could put in notes or other bits of data that are important to them in collecting that communication. I'm going to build this checklist item on placements because I'm going to put in a parent bill of rights or a foster parent bill of rights onto it. And then we're going to build that because it will be a different section than the application. And it doesn't relate to the home study at all either. So we're going to add a new item. And here we're going to actually enter a new custom section name. And this is going to be, I'm just going to call it placement. I was thinking, do I want to have like a placement start versus placement monitoring versus a placement discharge, but again, we're going to keep this fairly simple. And this is our placement. And perhaps we can call it initial placement. Right? The way I was typing that seemed weird. So now we're going to choose our table, and we do not have that table available to us. So when that happens, you don't despair. You just go over to settings, tables and fields, and then we're going to connect that table to this. So I've narrowed down to the foster family, so I don't have to look through everything. And then I'm looking for placements, which I don't see. Is that going to be, I just can't see it. Oh, okay. One of the things that have changed recently is your ability to access the placements table because it relates to accounting. And we went through a major challenge with somebody sort of manipulating those accounting tables. So let me see. I don't know a way to get there like this. Is there another? Let me try something different. Let me think through this really quick. Is perhaps we can do this on provider training year. Yeah, we should be able to do that there. And I don't know if it was available, so I'm going to go to the provider training year anyways and set it as being able to be accessed on the checklist. So under advanced options, you'll come to the advanced table properties, and can be used on checklist is here. And we're going to change it from no to yes. And that's going to allow us to add this table onto the checklist. I think this process takes a little bit of time to save. So I'm going to pop back over here and refresh this screen. So I'm kind of going to start over. So we're going to do, this is a provider training year. And this is really, all this means, this type of record rather, what this is capturing is for this family or for a family, they have different periods of time. They have X number of trainings for each parent in that family that need to be done. So X number of hours, which is pretty common for everybody. For foster parents, we call it provider training year. It should really be provider training period, because I think you can use this for your initial certification time as well. So I'm gonna pop that here. That one is saved, but I think it saved it faster. And then here is now our option. It was not previously available, or our table rather. It was not previously available, and now it is available. And so perhaps I want the family to complete, when this provider training year record comes out, I want them to fill out a document that they understand what training they have to do. Okay, that they have to, each provider has to take 30 hours, and we just want to make an acknowledgement of that signed by that family. So best practice, checking the fields that exist. None of the field that I want does not exist here, so I'm going to create new field. And if, like I mentioned the first time, this lands us back on the case, but I'm going to choose provider training year, because really, even though we've named it this, Sam doesn't know. That's just a text box field. Sam doesn't really know what table you want to build a new field on. And that's why it's making an assumption of the case, but that's not what that is. So here is acknowledgements of, too many. Acknowledgement of required trainings. Okay, so that is a document that we have. Why am I spelling that wrong? Let's just let that spell it. Okay. I'm not going to set a response time here. So again, kind of showing you, you don't have to set everything up. The responsible employee is not a responsible employee. We're going to say this is specific to the family. The family has to do this. This is going to be a document. So I'm going to create a space, a field for them to actually upload this document to. And because it's new, we don't have it in our document type list. So I'm adding that. I am now going to show it to clients. It would be lovely if I had a document to download, but I'm just going to stick in this item here. And, or if we wanted them to be connected to a form, we would have to have a public form built. And we could, we would need a public form built to attach a form to use. And that form needs to be set as a public form that would have, you know, maybe a template that's saying what they are acknowledging to, with a couple fields for them to type in their name that say they are agreeing to this information. We can tell them more information. What would I say here? This is the acknowledgement for requirements. Must take 30 hours per provider to move forward. Please sign and upload this document to let us know you agree. I know you would not write like that, but just trying to get something in on the spot of how to phrase that. I would still recommend this, and this is, you know, again, in 2025, we added this acknowledgement form, right? And then we could add criteria in this situation. I'm going to say this applies to everybody. So again, I'm going to let that be simpler. And we can look one more time at our new section. We do not have a time when it's automatically entered. So now we're kind of moving from building a checklist item to managing the checklist section in full. So I'm going to come in here and tell the system, one, what's here is the name. So I can adjust the name to maybe like required provider trainings. Okay, something like that. I can also, this is your name, your internal name when you see this checklist. End user checklist settings allows us to have a different name, like, or an alternate or an alias name for the end user. So we might say something nicer to them, like, I don't know. Basically, I'm going to write the same provider trainings for our agency foster care program, right? Something different, just to lighten the mood for them, or give them more instructions. So more instructions about this section. And if you want to get fancy, right, this is going to be just text. But if you want to get fancy, if you want to provide them with links to the provider training or images or a diagram to help them understand, or a table or something like that, you can connect to a template. You can always come back to these two, right? So right now I don't have a template that I'd want to use, but if I built a template later and come back, I can edit this and add that template. Here, I'm going to decide, when does this checklist open? Again, pretty much all the time, your checklist sections need to be triggered. Only if they're on the case can they be added from the record itself. So I'm going to say, when I enter a provider training year record and I put in the start date, I want this checklist section to open. We may have a smidge of a bug where it doesn't connect this. I can't remember if it's connecting this with the criteria or what, but you just come in and re-edit it. Right here, we're going to tell it how to, sometimes I really wanted start date to be here, but it's not. So I'm going to leave that open-ended for now. But on some records like background checks or people in the home, it's what person does this apply for? Right? So we can put in that person's name. We might have a field on here that's like, this is, what do you call it? Continuing education versus our initial certification training. Might be something that would apply on a provider training year. And then I could add criteria. I can add a memo to this entire section. Again, I do think these memos, this is an internal memo. I think that they are best practice to, again, communicate later on for folks that come after you. So now I've got this section is going to open when I add a provider training year. So I'm going to show that in real time. I am excluding any conversation in this call about auto actions. You could absolutely have auto actions that build on the complexity of the system, but at this point, I want to just talk about a record to really make sure for these multi-record tables, there's a deep connection to we're adding a record, it's opening a checklist. Simple, just keep it really high level. So that provider training year is a parent education. And then I'm going to add one to this family because they don't have any yet. And so I'm going to enter in the start date is today, and I'll say they, require 30 hours and press save. And if I go back to my checklist, I have a required provider training. Now, we did set this as something to be shown to the family. And you can see that here by the eyeball. And it's shown to the client. So I'm using the term family because we happen to be on a foster family. But if this were a birth parent record, if it were a volunteer record, if you have a new entity type and it's that type of record, it's whoever that client is or the end user, it's whoever they are. I think, depending on the population that some of our clients serve, child records could apply here as if like you're working with older youth and these kids need to be signing their own information or making agreements. There may be some reason why you're showing it to them as well. Okay, so that's where we see the visibility of that. And then we have view public checklist up here, and this will open up the visibility to what that client sees. So in the last release, we made a few changes to this to help you out based on assumptions that we're making. But basically yeah, I want to start that. Okay, so what I mean by that is this link, we made an assumption that people are providing this link and then just giving it to the family, and the family was trying to log in and it was making them log in to the front door of SAM where your users log in. Today, once everybody has the final release that'll be done in March, towards the end of March, when you copy this link, you'll see, and you open it up in a screen where you are not already logged in, being an end user, they're not logged in. This form is going to change. The link converts to taking to the same form, but the login screen. So nowadays you can give that link directly, which is a nice feature to have because it has made it so that your users, your team is not confusing your clients because this is the route that they're taking. Okay, so things that we can see on here. This is, again, the end user's view. And so this is information we have set to share with them. So we have apparently shared both of these inquiry options. We have this application section. We do not see under application form the consultation call because that was not sent to be shown to families. And we do see the provider trainings. And right, we see the message that we input, not whatever we called it, just required provider trainings. We have that whole phrase that I wrote out there. We see messaging to help them complete this form. There's messaging about this specific checklist item, and then the user can download the document that we provided, and then they can pop in here and upload it. So let me know what any of this stuff is, but we'll submit that. When a family or an end user submits a document through the document upload field, the date completed is entered. Right. So I've got, and now we're back. I've moved back internally. This is that family's record. When I refresh, we can see that date complete. And now we can actually open that document that the family uploaded to us. Okay. So we can set that. There are a lot of edit dates. You're able to change this stuff when you're working on this checklist. You can make changes. You can even change the date here. I don't think you should, but you can. In the upcoming, let me pop back to looking at all of them, because there are some people on the call that have been using SAM, this version of SAM, and made some really good feedback suggestions. So we've got the mark as completed is here, or if you need to put in a different date, that's available to you. And you can also click on edit memo. So, you know, type in information and press save. And then when you hover back over, you can see that information there. There are badges here. So this is telling us that this is in process. As soon as I mark this as complete, both items, both checklist items in this section are now complete, and that badge changes to complete. It will change in the foster families visibility as well. There is a setting if everything were done on the foster family side, right? So if I upload a document in here, this is going to be marked as complete on the client's view, but there was one more item, the consultation call that we added that is only for our team to see, and this shows that we're still in process. So until I mark this as complete by either entering today's date or another date that I got this done, our internal view of that will change to complete only when both of them are done. You can edit items also through here. You might edit this specific item. You can change the due date, maybe set a specific employee, and you could upload that document here, press save. So you can, again, kind of continue to manage it. Results are shown here. You can add in checklists your own information. You might say, this is really a specific item for this family. We're gonna do it in this, and maybe like we need another form because of conditions for this family, right? Whatever. This is something brand new for them. We put in a due date and set a responsible employee, put any further memo to that, and that item shows up. So you are able to kind of say, you know, yeah, things that are just specific are these really like random one-offs. If you need this type of document or you need to do this task on a particular client that does not apply to all of your clients, we'll go there. Kelly, I want to check in with you. I think I've covered almost everything, but I think there's a few things that I haven't. Reports I've not covered, but is there anything else I'm missing before I jump out of here?
I am looking through our outline, and yeah, I think you've hit everything besides reports.
Cool. All right, sweet. Thank you. So for checklists, there are reports. There are reports that are shown. You can open in settings, reports. So there's a couple of different ways to access reports. You can access reports that are built through the home page. This is an administrator's setting of that. I love the filters. I really find them to be very helpful. And so new folks aren't going to necessarily know what the table is, but SAM is built for adoption and foster care. So the table titles should feel fairly familiar to you. They really should. They're right. If we're talking about background checks, you've got a table called background checks. If we're talking about this parent education, it's parent education, or in the foster care situation, there's just a table above that in the hierarchy of that provider training year. Are we talking about communications, etc.? So I'm going to pop into the foster family checklist. There happens to be a report here. When I open it from the settings screen, I'm taken to the report builder first. We will have a different conversation and webinar about the report builder, but the columns at the top. So I'm really just going to pop in and open this. There are no filters that I saw. And we only have, what is showing here? Showing us like we only have one record when we know we have more. And I think the deal is there's a foster family checklist and then a foster family case checklist. So I'm actually going to build a report. It's the foster family, and under the case foster family checklist, and save. So I am going to go in and put in family name, and then we'll add some additional fields. We can put in that program field, and we'll add case checklist items. So what's the item? Is there a completed date? Is there a document? I think it's the field title, and I'll put in a memo, the due date, the response time, the worker. Should be enough information for us to kind of open up and take a peek. Cool. So we have foster family case checklist. Here is our specific person that we just worked from. So just to narrow down our visibility, I'm going to open up that. And of course, these fields pop in alphabetically. So organizing it properly on that edit form or edit the report builder would be helpful for us to read it better. Pop that over like here. The memo at the end, that out of the way. Due date, completed date, put that in number 6. Field title, and is there a document? I'm going to stick that down here. Now, if I open the report and then refilter by this person, it's going to be easier to read. So we already know that this person's in the foster, this record's in the foster care program. They've got these different checklist items on here. What is this? That's the due date. I think there's somebody may have gone in and changed the name for this field on the report, but it should say the due date or the response due date, because when I hover over it, that little tooltip that's opening up shows us the field title, whether it's completed, if there's any response time between it. It can only know response time if there was also a due date. So if I pop here and put in, it's funny, fresh, we now have a div. So that was the due date, right? It's a negative because I actually got that done almost 2 weeks early versus late. We can open up documents from here. We see our memos and our responsible workers. So this is a really nice way of looking if you're a program director for all of the tasks that are due for everybody you're managing, you're responsible for. Adding checklist report stats to this report will make it more useful, being who might be the case worker versus who is responsible, who are the responsible workers. You might have, this consultation call is new. So you might want to report stat on that consultation call to see specifically that. What is our outcomes on completing that timely now that we've implemented it this year? What are the things that we want to look at as a document? So it really is going to vary as to what information is important to you, to what kind of report stats and what information you actually put on a report. This also is going to show us what's been completed versus what's not completed, right? This one is not complete. You might have variations of this report of like every checklist item, or just those that are done, or just those that are incomplete. So you've got a lot of choices in how you want to build up reports that are going to be valuable to you. All right. And now I know we're running out of our time, like we're at 11 o'clock, but we've talked about so much and I talked to all of that. Would love to know if you guys have any questions with checklists that maybe we can answer. With that, I think I'm actually going to stop sharing, or not stop sharing, but stop the recording too.